Same thing with goals. PSAC championship's always our goal.
I think, with Coach Scott coming in here, new coaching staff, I feel like we could definitely, make us thorough with recruiting and stuff, get more guys in here.
For us, this is a new era, a new beginning, and we're off to an unbelievable start.
Our number one goal is going to be to protect the Plaid and win at home.
Warning: there may be explicit language in today's episode. Viewer discretion is advised.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to episode, I think, 111 of Tailgate Talks. We've done this for so long, Dom, that I completely forgot what number we're at. I think it's 111. But regardless, this episode is sponsored by DeFriscia Recycling and Junk Removal. More on that later. I'm going to get the introductions out of the way so I don't F up his last name. Joining us today, because this is a preview for the 2025 Edinboro football season. Yes, Dom and I do not go there anymore, but we still support the Fighting Scots, obviously, for probably the rest of our lives. All right, let's see if I can get this. Joining us is Joe Lodanosky. Almost. I almost got it.
Good try.
Yeah, it was a good try. It was a good attempt. I tried. But, Joe, thanks for coming on. This is an interesting year, obviously, because the big elephant in the room is that new coaching staff, new head coach, and Matthew Scott, and of course last season. And I see if you'll probably agree with me on this. And we've actually said this a lot on the show, and Dom can back me that we've said this a lot on the show. Was that yes, everybody we know the record. They were 3-8 last year, but we feel like last year the team was a lot better than 3-8. The close ones, obviously, we'll get to Robert Morris because that was the most notable win last year. Then, of course, IUP. But yeah, so far, I mean, what do you think of? And I know it's early. Of course, I've talked to Coach Scott last spring. I think he's a great guy, and the thing that I noticed so far was that he did a great job even in the spring, just building a culture right away, bringing the team together, bringing that synergy together. So far, what do you think of Coach Scott and all that?
Well, I mean, in terms of Matt Scott, the coach, I've not really seen him coach yet. I mean, you go to practice and when you go to practice a lot, Dom can attest, you can kind of feel what practice is. But until you see a game, you don't know what you're looking at in practice. Not all reps are equal. Which period is the true 1 versus 1? You know what? And it's a different style. I'm not saying that that one is right and one is wrong, but obviously Jake Nolf came from the Bad Rad coaching tree, and that was the style in which they practiced is how he was taught as a player and a young coach. So, let's be honest, again, no one's right, no one's wrong, but Coach Scott's record as the DC at New Haven sort of stands on its own. So I'm going to hold judgment because I saw the results of their system. Now, how our players fit in that system come a couple Thursday nights, that could be a totally different story. But, right now, it's an obviously different style. But I also think even though they've been together for how many weeks now, there's still a lot of guys that are sort of starting to figure out where they fit in the system, in the program, what their roles are going to be. So I don't know if we'll know until maybe the second or third week of September, quite frankly.
That is totally fair. I mean, because obviously you see in college football, you see in the NFL, new coach, if it doesn't work, then you're gonna know. Some of the times, if it doesn't work, you know right away. You can tell. So there's that. Dom, you got any comments on Coach Scott?
No, at the moment, not. At the moment, not so much. Just playing under a different head coach, and Coach Scott being his first year at Edinboro University. I think early on we're really going to see what those guys are about, and what Coach Scott's coaching style is about, with a couple tough matchups, East Stroudsburg and Kutztown, to start the year off. But it's going to be it should be exciting. I've heard a lot of good things from the guys through camp right now, and I'm excited to see how they get started here on, what is it, September 23rd, right? First game. 28th.
Is that right? Whatever that Thursday is.
Yeah.
Strasburg. Not looking forward to their car ride, that's for sure.
Yeah, no, for sure. But yeah, so going back to last season, like I said, 3-8. I thought the team was better than what the record said. Of course, key games going into last year. Robert Morris, of course, we've talked about it so many times on the show. Like, obviously those D1 teams like to schedule like Edinboro and for tune-up games, and of course, obviously Edinboro was not expected to win that, and went in, hit him in the mouth, and then won. Of course, other key games was IUP with, of course, Evan Lowe catching the game winner against IUP, and then things that actually caught my eye too, guys, was, and I know they were losses, but Slippery Rock, Clarion, and Millersville. And the reason why I say those is because you just look at the scores from those very close games, especially, I believe, was it Clarion that Edinboro was pretty much winning the entire game, and then Clarion came back in the fourth. And then Millersville. And listen, we know what happened at the end of that game. It's way past. It's almost a year coming up since then. Want to argue? Should have called a timeout? Whatever. Nothing. You can't change. You obviously can't change it now. Even once it happened, you couldn't change it. So of course there was different opinions about that. But like I said, guys, there was especially Slippery Rock. They were close. They were really close. But I guess the next question for the both of you was, were you guys' thoughts overall from last season, from these close games?
To quote the great Dennis Green, you are what your record says you are. There's just not a whole lot around it. And I don't mean this in disrespect to anybody, but we were there on the field post game, and Robert Morris was stunned. That was a program that had a lot of expectation. You can't go to their place and win, and then lose to Clarion and Millersville and Gannon in the fashion that you do. One of Coach Nolf's great lines was, if you want to be good, your best players have to play like your best players, right? If you're a good team and you're making progress, you can't lose to teams that you should be beating. And, the FCS win is great, but in the grand scheme of things, if you can't beat the teams that are like you or below you in your own league, that step sort of is negated a couple of weeks down the road. Slippery Rock being the different scenario, what was it, 24-0, and then they scored how many unanswered, and a missed assignment late that was a huge difference in the outcome of that game. But how do you grow from that? The Millersville game is a great one. I wouldn't think that there was a team meeting or a lifting session or any time that team got together in the off season that the final 90 seconds of that game wasn't brought up and discussed. So, you are what you were last year, and what's in front of you is in front of you. So what they take from the wins and the losses is irrelevant, because it's what is your record. We should have, we could, you didn't. It's not going to be an exception when the committee gets together and say, hey, I know they're 3-8, but they should be 7-4. Let's give them a playoff bid. That's not the way it works. You've got to win the games in front of you, and it really felt like a country song last year. 2 steps forward, 1 step back. You'd address one thing from one week, and then something else, would come and bite you. The attention to detail is, if you're going to be in one possession games like they were, 6 times I think last year, and you're going to be in one possession games, win or lose, attention to detail is going to be the outcome. Dom, it's a false start penalty that puts you behind the sticks. I know that cost them in some of those games late when all of a sudden 2nd and 6 becomes 2nd and 11. The play calling changes. So the attention to detail, if you're going to be in close games, the attention to detail has to be what is fixed to improve to make sure you're not 3-8 again with a bunch of what ifs.
It's kind of coulda. It's kind of like a coulda, shoulda, woulda, is what people say. But yeah, does my mic sound good? All right, Dom actually just texted me. It was echoing a little bit. Yeah, I'll hold it a little bit. But Dom, you got anything to add on to that?
Yeah, just going off of that. That pretty much just sums up this entire conference. Pretty much like just PSAC historically is a very tough conference, and each week is going to be a tough test while you're playing the best team in the conference, the worst team in the conference. Anybody can beat anybody, and it just comes down to the level of focus and preparation going into all those games. So, I mean, we'll see how they bounce back after a 3-8 season under a new head coach. It should be interesting.
Yeah, should be interesting. But looking at now, how does it sound now? Because I re-clipped it. Okay. So of course, the seniors that were lost, and of course I'll get into people that transferred and went into the portal. Of course, if I miss anybody, I do apologize. But of course, Edinboro did lose C.J. Waldier, Gabe Holslander, quarterback Isaac Bernard, who's been the quarterback the last 4 years, Corey Gross Jr., Adrian Cuevas, Toby Klein, and a big one, and that I believe, and that a lot of people will believe, and that is punter Reed Martin, which is a big loss. And then, of course, lost players, Zach Malpica, Tegan Brown, and Fredo Diaz, to name a few. So it's going to be interesting to see. Obviously, that's just the state of college football. That's how it works. People will leave, and you gotta adapt and change and all that. But yeah. So, what do you guys think about the seniors that were lost, and we'll go from there. I'm trying to find a way to word it right, because I didn't really write down a question for this one. I just wrote down the seniors. But obviously, like I said, a noticeable loss is Reed Martin, and then the others. So whoever would like to go first and speak on the people that were lost after last year.
I think what'll be most interesting, and you look at under the previous regime, Clay Cunningham had the video game numbers.
Oh, forgot about Clay.
And CJ had the video game numbers, and then Fredo had the video game numbers. Mm-hmm. But that was the scheme. That's not going to be the scheme. And, when you look, I think up front in particular, that's where Edinboro is probably the deepest with returning the most along that defensive line. I'm not, from what I've seen so far, I don't necessarily, and I don't mean a knock on any, schematically, I'm not certain that Coach Cradle and Coach Scott's defense is going to be as reliant on the linebackers making the plays like the previous one was. And again, that's not who's right, that's not who's wrong. That's just a difference in scheme. And from what I've seen so far, I don't know, while those numbers are insane, I'm not certain whether it's Nick Panucci or whomever is going to be that, that middle linebacker. I'm not certain that their responsibilities are going to be the same as they would have been last year.
Do you think, to add on to that, Joe, do you think that's one of the top questions going into the season, is how the defense is going to respond under a new regime? And then obviously from comparing from last year, do you think that's possibly one of the biggest questions going into this season?
Yeah, I mean, roles are going to be different for some guys, right? Obviously, again, it's a different scheme. I think they're going to play a lot more zone. I don't necessarily if there's going to be as many overhangs and whatnot. I think it's going to be more gap discipline. Again, it's a different scheme. Guys are going to be asked to do different things. I don't know if necessarily you're going to see the frequency of exotic blitzes like you saw last year. But again, I'll be honest with you, it's been pretty vanilla thus far. We're still a little bit early to see the game plan being implemented. I think this is just the bare bones basics of what Coach Scott's putting in. He made an interesting comment the other day when I talked to him on the sideline. I'm paraphrasing. He's like, this is really simple, but these guys don't know how much they've gotten yet. So I think that he's really kind of delivering it, and it's kind of hidden as to its purpose down the line for some different philosophies.
Yeah, for sure. Dom, obviously, you were obviously really close in that, and you were on the defense when you were on the team and stuff. So obviously you would know, and of course you're close with CJ, Gabe, and Clay. Like, obviously big losses. So what can you say about what the defense was before, and then if you have anything to add on to what Joe was saying?
I think that whoever takes over that middle linebacker role I think they're gonna need to do it in a huge way, because obviously I'm playing with CJ and Clay. They held a huge leadership role, and I'm curious to see who they do put in that Mike linebacker spot, playing behind veteran D line. But going off of what Joe said with gap integrity, that's gonna be a very important thing if they do want to get more exotic with that defense. And the leadership roles don't not just on the defensive side of the ball, but on the offensive side of the ball. Losing Gabe to graduation, someone just has to step up on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's gonna be interesting to see what happens. Joe, like you said in the beginning, it's too early to tell until possibly like week 2, week 3. But that is enough time to know, obviously, and get the first answers of okay, what's working, what's not working, and going from there. But all right, so next I'm gonna go ahead and pay the bills real quick, because we got to pay the bills. So this show is sponsored by Defriscia Recycling and Junk Removal. Services they provide: vehicle purchasing, scrap metal, appliance removal, junk removal, garbage services, dumpster rentals, curbside pickups, house and garage building cleanouts, and demolition. How do you get paid for your junk? It's easy. Get in touch, choose your service, and get paid on the spot. So thank you to Defriscia Recycling and Junk Removal. So last spring, I had a few guys on the show for the football team, including obviously Coach Scott, Bo Swartz, Nick Feedy, and Jarek France. But real quick, I just want to play a little snippet of what Coach Scott said last spring when I asked him expectations going into this coming season.
Our number one goal is going to be to protect the Plaid and win at home. Okay, absolutely. So the thing that we were able to do at New Haven is we won a lot of home games. I might have lost 3 games at home in the 7 years I was the defensive coordinator there. And so when you do that, right, that's a lot of homecomings, family weekends, senior days, where you've got a lot of alums coming back to your campus and having great experiences. And so now you're creating value, you're creating enjoyment. People want to be a part of that winning culture.
Okay, so we obviously with new recruits and stuff, I'll be real honest. I'm not too familiar with the new recruits Coach Scott has brought in, but I am familiar with the guys that are returning, because we have not talked about returning guys coming in this year. And of course, if I forget anybody, I apologize. And those returning guys are Jarrett France, Jacob Coburn, Nico Mervos, Jerry Dinkins, Caden Spiegel, who was one of the captains named in the spring during the spring game, Jeremiah Neely, JT Taylor, another captain named in the spring game, and then Bo Swartz, just to name a few. So presuming right now, I'm just assuming Bo is going into week 1 potentially as the starter that I know of. Of course, I have not been at the practices and seen anything yet.
I'll say this. I don't know. I don't know if, and I guess this is maybe good. Bo Swartz might be QB3 as QB1, because when you watch them practice, it seems to be equal. So I mean, even Matt Meacham is thrown in the mix. Nico Marchitelli, the transfer from Indiana. I mean, it's really hard to watch and think, oh, that's QB1. Obviously, that's not the case. Now, I will say this: from what we've seen so far, this schematically, this is a better fit for Bo Schwartz. And this is against anything against Ike. He's going to go down as one of the most decorated quarterbacks in Edinboro history, numbers-wise. But from what I've seen so far, the ask of the quarterback is much more athletic, whomever the quarterback has been. So for me, that would play in Bo's favor. But again, from what I've seen, I wouldn't be prepared to tell you who's 1, 2, or 3 because they all seem to be equal to me in terms of reps.
Yeah, that's totally fair. Like I said, I not at the practices, wasn't sure. Of course, I did see in the spring, Meach did look really good in the spring. So yeah, and again, like these questions I am asking, it goes back to what we said at the beginning. It's hard to tell, being this early on, because this is obviously just brand new with the new coaching staff, and we really don't know. Obviously, we can go off of what you've seen at practice, Joe, and what I saw in the spring. It is really what we can base it on. But Dom, do you have anything else to add to that?
Yeah, I think whoever does end up with that starting quarterback spot, I think the most important thing that you want to see out of them is just game management, especially when you're in a 2-minute drill trying to get some points back late in the game, or 4-minute drill when you have the lead, trying to get to the end of the game. Just going back to all those one possession games, I think game and clock management for that starting quarterback is going to be huge for Edinboro's success this year.
Yeah. So we'll see who QB1 is. But like you said, Joe, in the new scheme, does seem like Bo is most likely the favorite there. But it's why a quarterback competition is called a quarterback competition, because it's right there for the taking. So we will see. But yeah. So moving on. Again, bear with me. This is a question that obviously it's once again, it's like, how do you know? Like, they haven't played yet, like new scheme and everything. But one of the points that I wanted to talk about so far, and of course, Joe, you've been the only one that has been to the practices so far, so obviously you would know better than we would. But so far, at least from based off what you've seen, just to practice, because I do have this written down, is so far, what do you think Coach Scott has had? Like, what has he brought to the table, and what can he bring to the table for this Fighting Scots team going into the 2025 season?
Well, I just think the one thing that, and again, the styles are different. Not that one's right or one's wrong, but when you watch Coach Scott on the field, it's really difficult for him to walk by somebody and not coach him up. Like, his attention to detail is insane. And I think that the thing that maybe this is what we're getting to with not knowing who any starters are per se, other than really highly educated guesses based on what we saw last year. I think everybody is getting prepared like they're going to play. So, just the balance of the reps. I mean, I don't think he's going to be swapping out offensive linemen, but I wouldn't be surprised if you saw, 9, 11 D linemen rotate through. I wouldn't be surprised if you saw 5 to 7 wide receivers rotate through. I wouldn't be surprised if you didn't see some 13 personnel with Neely, Bizon, and Brady. So, like, there's so much, and it's so hard to gauge. Again, because I've not seen a game yet. Like, you didn't really see anything in the spring game, but you would sort of get the sense with Jake Nolf kind of the way his mind worked. But that took like 3 years of going to practice almost every day to start to understand what you were watching. So again, what Matt Scott is doing is what Matt Scott learned at New Haven. And anybody that wants to compare him to somebody else, No disrespect to the Fighting Scots, but Edinboro wishes they'd have New Haven's record from the last 7 years. I mean, they have been very, very good in Super Region 1 and being an NCAA playoff team. What feels like every year. So again, the guy knows what he's doing. His defense held Slippery Rock in check twice last year. Their offense is what let him down because they played him in the opener, I think, and then they played him in the playoffs. So we're gonna let. I have nothing but I'm gonna trust his system because I've seen for years that it works, and I'm just intrigued what I can learn along the way watching.
Yeah, Dom, you got anything to add on to that?
No, man, I'm excited. Just coming from from experience, obviously, we have had a few rough years in the mix, especially in my time there, and I'm excited to see what Coach Scott does, especially coming from New Haven, consistently a nationally ranked football team, and hopefully everything that he's learned, just his coaching style, rubs off on these guys a little bit, and they win some more football games.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a couple people in the coaching staff that we have not talked about yet, and that is obviously new offensive coordinator, new defensive coordinator. Of course, Zach Griffin for the offensive offensive side of things, and then Eric Crandell. Crandell, is that how you say it? Crandell?
I think it's Cradle. Cradle.
Cradle.
I believe so. Yeah. My apologies if not, but I believe that's what it is.
Yeah, no. I mean, I mispronounced your name in the beginning, so it's okay. But on the defensive side, have you got to Joe? Have you had the chance to talk to either guy at the practices so far?
No, they're very detail oriented, and it's again, just to go back, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but like how different things are. They might come out in just this insane 12-minute live period, and then they'll break off into position groups for like 40 minutes. Where again, it's the attention to detail, and I enjoy watching Tyler Hamilton, the offensive line coach who played at Maryland. Obviously, that's pretty good experience being a Power 5 Big Ten player. I like watching him work. Rashad Craig, the new D-line coach, he brings a different energy. So it's their style, it's their guy. Now, Coach Craig is not one of their guys. I think he came from Lock Haven, but I'm pretty certain most everybody else has come from New Haven. But these are guys. It might be a new school and it might be new colors, but it's not new to them. So, I really enjoy watching what their style is and how they do it. A lot of position work, and it's just attention to detail. And, let's be honest, we lost a lot of games last year for mental errors in the clutch. I mean, there's no dancing around that. We had a lot of guys that individually made mistakes that cost us wins.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, so all right, so last couple of things that I want to tackle before we head out of here. We'll talk about the schedule here in a sec. But I'm going to pull up the schedule for this coming year.
Let's just say this: the crossover games to start. Jimmy Terwilliger is one of the best to ever do it. Won the Harlan Hill at East Stroudsburg. Actually broadcasted the first game he ever started in college. Jimmy and his dad is a football mind. They're going to throw it all over the lot. That's what East Stroudsburg does. And I know Silver Rock doesn't necessarily want to hear this, but in the last 10, 12 years, Kutztown has been just as good, if not better, than they have in terms of getting into region play and whatnot. That the schedule is not easy. We saw that last year. And again, I don't know if it would be fair to anybody involved to start saying what the expectation is, because I don't have an expectation. But after Thursday night, when we've got that 9-hour car ride home from East Stroudsburg, I think then we'll start to kind of figure things out. Because if you remember last year, Dom, Jerry Dinkins looked like he was going to be first team all conference. And then what happened? He got hurt. And Jerry Dinkins hadn't really returned to that form that we saw against East Stroudsburg. Nico Mervos was on track for a great year. What happened to him? He got hurt. Mike, you mentioned the other one, Coburn and France. Injury riddled. We don't know what to make of those. I want to see us play 60 minutes because last year we played 60 minutes, one game, really, and beat Robert Morris. So, I mean, that to me, like when you're trying to get figured out, is playoff the goal? Yeah. But, to quote the corny James Franklin, 1-0, 1-0, 1-0. I think when you're trying to turn it around, I think you just have to stay in that mindset. And how do you beat East Stroudsburg on Thursday and then reevaluate? You got a long week and you're right back at it. It's the PSAC. It's hard. There's no weeks off. You saw that last year, with teams that are good or not good. Well, bad teams tend to win all the time. It happens every year. And this is just too good of a league. And Edinboro is certainly not in a position to overlook anybody. So I will give you the Matt Scott speech. East Stroudsburg is the only thing that anybody in that building cares about because it's really hard to go 2-0 if you're 0-1.
100%.
Yeah, no, for sure. But I'll go through the schedule real quick. Obviously, it is August 28th, so did have it right. On Thursday starts at 7 o'clock at East Stroudsburg. I'm sure, like you said, Joe, earlier, that ride is going to be a lot of fun for everybody, I bet. And then, of course, they open with Kutztown at home for their home opener on September 13th, and then on the 20th at Bloomsburg, and then the 27th against Clarion, and then at IUP on October 4th, and then October 11th against Cal. I believe that's the homecoming game, if I'm not mistaken. And then versus Fairmont State at home on the 18th, and then at Gannon on the 25th, and then Seton Hill on November 1st, and then the last two games at home against Slippery Rock, and then at Millersville to close out the year. Again, I believe that one will be a fun car ride as well. But yeah, so last thing I wanted to...
You think about this, right? Your first three games are against three teams that beat you last year. Yeah. Because Robert Morris isn't on the schedule. They lost to Stroud, they lost to Kutztown, they lost to Bloom. And, the FCS win being the outlier. So, I mean, they got to stack blocks in games that would be winnable. Kutztown is going to be brutal, but Bloomsburg is another game last year that they felt like they let get away, which there's a lot of them in that conversation.
Also, Mike, there's one thing I really want to emphasize on what Joe said. Good teams do tend to win a lot, especially in the PSAC. Joe, I'm sure you remember a couple of years ago when we played Seton Hill and they came in and just blew us out of the water, and that just goes. And as I think they came in 0-8 or 1-8, and they came in, played one of the best games they've played, beat us pretty good. It just goes to show how good a lot of players in the conference are, and that should just emphasize the idea that Edinboro cannot overlook anybody this year.
Yeah, like you look, like I think that we've lost to Clarion 2 years in a row, where Jake Nolf was 2-2 against IUP, and we've not beaten Cal in like 20 years.
Yeah, haven't beaten Cal in a long time.
Yeah,
Clarion.
I've been doing this a long time. This is only a handful of years with Edinboro, but I did Clarion football for 15 years, and it's just on any given week, and you watch every week, there's going to be a score that's going to just make you scratch your head. Whether it's Slippery Rock hanging on to beat Edinboro or Slippery Rock, beating Indiana by a 30-pack. You're like, how'd that happen? It's just the nature of the beast. Everybody's good. But I always tell people this when they say, "Oh, well, so and so's not any good." Well, you look at that roster. 98% of that roster was the best player on their high school team. Yeah, they're all pretty good. It's whether do they have the maturity and do they have the group that comes through, or do they find lightning in a bottle like they did with Lustig, where they've got returned everybody. And then that turns out the missing piece was Tanaz Gregory, and they go from 0-11 to 9-2. Is there a Tanaz Gregory in this recruiting class? I don't know, but I sure hope so. Because, it just takes that one guy that makes you a little bit different. and then all of a sudden you're the bug, or I'm sorry, you're the windshield, not the bug. It's just because there's again when you're in that many close games like we were last year. Is it whether it's quarterback play, not turning over, timely, coverage, yada yada yada? It's not far away, so it could be just one guy kind of figuring it out that like I'm dominant. We saw like Nick Rossi last year emerge. What if Nick Rossi takes that same step up front with JT Taylor and Sunday Kegawanu, and all of a sudden you don't need linebackers to be great because you got 4 dudes that can get home on their own. That's the kind of progress that we need to see, and then we can start talking, mapping out a path to the playoffs. But we need to see Thursday night, the best players play like the best players.
Yeah, for sure. And like you said, and obviously it's like the first thing they are thinking about right now is that Thursday night game in East Stroudsburg, and then of course after that game, it's who's next again? Kutztown. It's Kutztown and nobody else. And like you said, treat it like it's 1-0 and go each week by week. But yeah, so I actually do have I just thought of something for the end, but for at least for this upcoming season, do either of you have any final thoughts going into for this football team going into 2025? I'm excited to see what's going to happen. Obviously, we don't know a lot yet, but still with the new regime and all that, I'm pumped to see what this team can do in the 2025 season.
I want to see 2 guys because from what I saw, they've been the best players on the field thus far. Ennis has been phenomenal at wide receiver, and I know you guys may know. Soon the rest of the world's going to know. Nate Deans is a dude. Nate Deans is going to be an absolute problem for the next 3 years in the back end of that defense. He is terrific. Yeah.
And that's literally another name I forgot. Is a lot of people aren't talking about Gavin Ennis. I believe he's due for a big year this year. I believe.
I think a lot of it's gonna come down to just this roster's maturity. Like, can they string together a few good days of practice throughout the week, leading up to pretty much any of their opponents. A good week of practice goes a long way, especially in this conference. IUP 2021, I remember we had a great week of practice. Energy was high, and we ended up beating IUP. But then there were some other weeks where we didn't have that great of a week, and then teams like 0-8 Seton Hill came in, beat us pretty good. So I just want to see where the leaders are, how far they can bring that team, and just maturity from all those guys as a whole.
Yeah, for sure. But so for the last thing, since we have you here, Joe, and obviously this is Edinboro themed, and I just saw actually literally on my phone just a second ago. So far from the Canadian Football League, obviously you guys probably haven't seen, but Trevor Harris, obviously greatest quarterback probably in Edinboro's school's history. We actually interviewed him in January, Alex and I. Great guy. Obviously the records at Edinboro. But since you've been covering Edinboro, Joe, have you ever got to meet Trev in person at all?
Well, I got to broadcast a couple of Trevor's games back in the day when I was doing Clarion football. Actually, I watched the game on Sunday, Hamilton Tiger Cats, because Julian Hauser, who played defensive end for Clarion, played on that team, taking on Trevor and the Rough Riders. But I will actually take you a step further. I got to see Roland Rivers at Slippery Rock. I got to see Zach Zulli at Shippensburg. I got to see Jimmy Terwilliger at East Stroudsburg. All 3 of those guys won Harlan Hills. Trevor Harris is as good as those guys are.
Tyson Bajan in there as well.
Tyson Bajan. I forgot about Tyson Bajan. Yeah. Got to see all of them in basically the last 20 years, 25 years. Trevor Harris takes a backseat to absolutely no one.
Right. and he treated us really well in January. He was so kind for his time. I don't know if you guys saw the clip, but his son actually introduced him at one of the games. That was so cool. Yeah, that was so cool. And speaking of Tyson Bagent, just got his contract extension with the Chicago Bears today. I believe it was like 10 mil. I don't know what the year was on it, so he's obviously doing well. And speaking of well, hopefully one of those things is the team, Edinboro Football team in 2025. Hopefully they do well. And we'll see if the if the record can and the team can improve from last year with new regime, new head coach and stuff. And like I said, I'm pumped to see what this team does. But last thing, I got to pay the bills one more time. Thank you to the First Year Recycling and Junk Removal. They offer vehicle purchasing, scrap metal, appliance removal, junk removal, garbage services, dumpster rentals, curbside pickups, house and garage building cleanouts, and demolition. 3 easy ways to get paid for your junk. Get in touch, choose your services, and then get paid on the spot. The First Year Recycling and Junk Removal. Joe, thanks for coming on. This was fun.
Thanks.
We'll have to get you back on after the season, or at least in the midway point to get thoughts of what we've seen so far. Obviously, at those points, we'll have more answers to the questions that we have. Yeah, I guess the last thing I gotta say is roll Scots. Dom, obviously Alex isn't here, so obviously you are paper toss or whatever number 2. So go ahead.
I don't have anything to toss, so